Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to West Virginia University's President's Panel discussion. Today's discussion is part of the David C. Hardesty Jr. Festival of Ideas. My name is Diane Lewis. I am the founder and president of Action Facilities Management located here in Morgantown, West Virginia. For today's conversation, we are fortunate to have a panel of people who have served in the position of president for West Virginia University. Collectively, these panelists have served as a chief executive position for a total of almost 125 years. Yes, yes. But wait, there's more. At 15 different universities and systems, and in 13 states. That is amazing. So this panel represents a tremendous depth of expertise and a great breadth of experience. And we're happy to have them here for a discussion about the future of West Virginia University and the future of American higher education. I'm pleased to provide some opening remarks, especially since I currently serve as one of the members on the West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission. And I also, before that, I served as the former Board of Governors for West Virginia University. My experience on both of these boards have given me a valuable perspective on the wide range of challenging issues facing higher education and the importance the president's role and leadership in particular. One of the most critical responsibilities a board of governors is hiring of the president. Although any institution is far more and far larger than any one person, it's the president that sets the tone, articulates a vision, and serves as the university's #1 public ambassador. It is a difficult job with constant demands on that person's time and almost impossible expectations no one can meet on a daily basis. The job means tackling those controversial issues, making difficult decisions, and balancing competing needs for multiple constituencies, often while working under financial constraints, media scrutiny, and of course, political pressure. And I suspect we may hear a few of those themes here today. America's institution of higher education, especially public land-grant universities like WVU, have been engines of economic development and sources of opportunity and mobility for millions of people. Leading such an organization is not just a job, but I believe it's a calling, and even more so when public confidence in higher education is wavering and state budgets are being cut. Strong leadership during such times is essential, and especially if these institutions are to continue to fulfill their missions of service to society and the next generation. A phrase often associated with NASA and Apollo 13 mission is, failure is not an option. And for our state and for our nation, failure in higher education is not an option. And I'm sure you all are looking forward to the insights and observations of this distinguished panel about how we can ensure the continued success of our universities and colleges, starting right here with West Virginia University. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Joyce McConnell, West Virginia University's Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs and Professor in the WVU College of Law. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Diane, thank you for opening our event. I am Joyce McConnell, the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs here at West Virginia University. And it is my absolute privilege to be with you today And in a few minutes, I have the honor of introducing you to our incredibly distinguished panel. I have to tell you that when Dr. J. Cole first asked me to introduce these presidents, it seemed to me that we were really going back pretty far in WVU history. But when I looked at all the names and realized that I had worked closely with almost all of these individuals, well, it really didn't seem like any time at all had passed. I had not gotten any older, and I didn't understand how so much time had gone by. So since I'm here as the warm-up act today, let me start out with some humor. A boxer, a minister, a police officer, a psychologist, and a Nobel laureate walk into a university auditorium. The head of the faculty senate says, "What is this, some kind of joke? Where is our new president?" The head of the search committee replied, "No joke. We couldn't find one person who fit the leadership profile you asked for, so we hired them all. And we still came in under budget." This is a great distillation of truth. A university president is asked to be all things to all people. Because of this, some presidents protest that they are doomed to fail. But the truly great ones, like those gathered here today, figured out how to do it and how to do it with grace. Of course, it starts with hiring a great provost. I know that we are all looking forward to hearing some of the secrets of their success today, and I use that phrase deliberately. Each one of these people has succeeded in the role of university president, and that means they have made their institution better. Because no matter what pundits may say about the changing university and the ever-shifting role of the university president, the fact remains that many students and even some faculty cannot even pronounce the word provost. Many more people on our campuses don't discriminate between a vice or an associate or an assistant, whatever, when they think about their leadership team. They do think of their president. Our institutions of higher education must change and are changing to meet the demands of this increasingly globally connected, technologically dependent world that has seen a pace of disruption unlike any other time in history. But even as they adapt, they need and demand a beacon, a single figure to look to in times of crisis and in times of celebration. That's who our greatest university presidents are. They are lamps cutting through the fog that is the unknown future. I, for one, am tremendously grateful to have had the opportunity to serve with so many exceptional individuals who have shone bright at every step of the way. And now it is an honor to announce our presidential panelists. I'd like to bring them up onto the stage in chronological order, according to when they served as the president here at WVU. You might note that, as the program indicates, each of these individuals has served in leadership roles at other institutions as well, either before or since their service at WVU, and sometimes both. We also invited our colleague, President Michael Garrison, to be with us today, but he had another commitment. We wish him well and hope to see him at a future event. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming, first, Jean A. Budig, president from 1977 to 1980. Jean, would you like to stand? E. Gordon Gee, president from 1981 to 1985. Diane L. Reinhardt, acting president from 1985 to 1986. Neil S. Bucklew, President from 1986 to 1995. David C. Hardesty, Jr., President from 1995 to 2007. C. Peter McGraw, Interim President from 2008 to 2009. James P. Clements, President from 2009 to 2013. And finally, a familiar name and face, E. Gordon Gee, the current president of WVU. I would also like to introduce significant others, spouses, fiancés of all of these wonderful presidents. I would like them to please stand so that we can recognize all of those who worked so hard on behalf of the university. Thank you so very much. We are fortunate to have a very distinguished moderator for us this afternoon. That person is someone very familiar to many of us in the room, and we are delighted to welcome him back and thank him for braving the weather, trains, planes, cars to get here. Dr. Robert E. DeClerico, WVU Professor Emeritus of Political Science. Dr. DeClerico, the stage is yours, as are the presidents.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming. The individuals on this panel have each had the privilege, and I emphasize the word privilege, of leading institutions which have a noble calling, namely to inquire, to enlighten, and to serve. That latter charge resting particularly heavily on land-grant institutions such as WVU, who are obligated to engage with the community of which they are a part. As has already been pointed out, taken together, the universities led by our panelists total no fewer than 15. They are some public land grant, private, and located in virtually every region of the country. If we consider all the administrative posts held by these individuals over the course of their academic careers, the number of years in harness altogether totals, by my count, and I had a lot of fun doing this, 170 years. Needless to say, the knowledge and the wisdom that they have accumulated over all those many years will inform their observations today, observations that are particularly welcome at this point in time, since in many quarters higher education is considered to be in a state of crisis. I'd like to open by asking our panelists whether, as we head into the future, whether higher education has a major public relations problem on its hands. Let me tell you why I suggest that. According to a Pew Research poll, 40%, only 40% of Americans think that they got their money's worth out of a good value for their money with respect to their education. 58% of the Republicans in the nation think that higher education is having a negative impact on the country. The number of individuals who think they can succeed in the workplace without an education, college degree, has gone from 43% in 2009, up to 57%. Do I have a problem with this?
No, it's back.
Up to 57% in 2017. 43, 2009, up to 57% in 2017, who say, I can succeed in the workplace without having a college degree. One final point, George Gallup took a poll last October in which he found that support for higher education had dropped 9 points from 2015 to 2017, or 2018, excuse me, and that was the highest drop for any institution that he examined in his poll. That's why I'm asking, do we not have a major public relations problem on our hands?
Dr. DeClercq, I'll go if that's okay. First, let me just say I'm so excited and so pumped up to be back. Beth and I absolutely, completely love West Virginia and WVU, and it is an honor to be back and an honor to be with this group. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. When I was growing up, and I'm first generation, my parents they never set foot on a college campus. My grandparents didn't graduate from high school. When I was growing up, I was told that education is the path to a better life. That's always the key. If you want a better life, get a quality education. And we all believed it, and it worked. And education is transformational. Changed my life, changed the life of my kids and many in my family. What you say and the data you report are actually true. There's a change. We don't value education the way we used to value education. You will hear comments that college isn't worth the money. Research isn't worth doing, even though we know that almost every major breakthrough in research happened mostly at major universities. So it's troubling when you put the data on the table, but it is, those are the latest studies. So I think leaders in higher ed, we have to do a better job talking about the return on the investment, the impact, not just for individual, but for society as a whole.
Bob, I've been in higher education for a long time, and I've heard this charge over and over that we have a public relations problem. Well, maybe we do, but my question is, or my answer is, if that is the case, why do people keep coming to us and wanting to attend our colleges and our universities if we're worthless and aren't important? And I think the answer speaks for itself.
David?
I think that it's possible that people are not defining the institution for the poll question the same way as we would define the institution. I just can't imagine West Virginia without West Virginia University's impact and the role of the other colleges in the state, all the medicine that is provided throughout the state, and the medical personnel who are trained here and the research that's done here. You think about the leadership and the law, the continuing legal education efforts. You think about economic development. The Tech Center in Fairmont is a direct response to the FBI. We were asked when the FBI came, would we be supportive? And we set up a biometrics and forensics degree and so forth. You look at where our people go, our students go, they become leaders. John Chambers was just here, who is a great international leader of the high-tech world. Ray Lane, the same way. We just have a lot of people going on, a lot of things going on. So we are, especially public land grants, we're in every county with 4-H. We're in many parts of the state with education and other activities. So it's hard for me to believe that if people were asked the question a different way, has your family benefited from 4-H? Do you use a doctor that went to WVU? You know, and those kinds of things came out. I think might get a little different survey result.
Good point.
Yep.
I think that one of the elements, and I'm not going to say it's a major element, but one of the elements that's probably influencing the PR issue is that the debt that students and their families are experiencing. Tuition has gotten to be at a different level than it was for most of us 25 years ago. That reflects the fact that government has pulled back resources, had others' needs to address. And tuition has grown beyond the inflation rate. And it's gotten to the point that, as necessary as it may be, families and graduates are dealing with the fact that debt is a challenge to them. I think that influences how we're observed and viewed.
Diane?
I think that I'm going to say that it's more than a PR issue. I think that if we broaden our discussion and talk about higher education in general, for a number of people, higher education or a graduate degree is not the American dream. And some might say it was never, given what history can tell us. And also, I think that the loss of sanctuary for other institutions, such as the church, the political environment, other institutions as well, puts us in that category where there's a general lack of well-being. So it's not specific to higher education, and the cost is enormous for a number of people. It's simply out of reach.
Jean, did you want to?
Well, I just wanted to add to that for some public lawmakers, they believe that they should have more control over what the education is, more tied to economic development outcomes. And for the student is saying, why should I pay for the whole album when I only want 2 songs?
All right. Well, this gets to a second point. There have been a number of defining moments in higher education. The establishment of land-grant universities in the early 1860s, the Smith-Lever Act that established the Extension Service, and the GI Bill after the Second World War that had an enormous impact. And then in the 1960s, you have community colleges starting to blossom. Then in early 1990s, expansion in the student loan program, late 1990s, the for-profit universities coming on board. Would it be fair to say that the defining event for higher education in the 21st century is the movement of higher education from becoming a public good to becoming a private good? And is that reversible?
It's a great point. And I want to back it up to where you started talking about land-grant universities. And WVU is one of the greatest land-grant universities in the country, does its mission so well, serving this state in every county, the incredible faculty, staff, and students, the economic impact, the workforce development, so many things that it does well. I always thought WVU did so much for this state, really with so little input. But it gets back to the mission, and that land-grant mission of the public good, that universities are there for the public good, and the investments haven't been there in recent times, so it's becoming more of a private good. If you go back to the Land-Grant Act, which you referenced so beautifully, it's broader, it's bigger impacts across the state and in our communities, and we should never lose sight of that.
Well, Gordon, WVU has lost, what, 34 million in state appropriations?
Yeah, about $40 million, and we want it back. So I think that, Bob, I think that I think this is a complex question. Let me just try a couple of ideas here. First of all, I think it's very important that one of the things that we've lost in higher education is the fact that we've lost a differentiation. Public and private, small and large, Mormon and Catholic. We have, thanks to U.S. News and World Report and a variety of other things, which I think is an abomination, I will say that. I have no problem with it other than the fact that it's wrong. I tell the story about the fact that when I was the president of Brown, they did their first survey of law schools, and Brown's University's law school was ranked number 8th in the country, but Brown didn't have a law school, so it shows how good work they did. But but I think that people in this state, I think people in every state, want to know that their university cares about them. We have to capture the hearts and minds of our people, and that means we have to be very specific to what we're doing. I mean, this is a great institution. It is all over the world. We're doing a variety of other things, but in the end, we have to remember that we do have a very serious obligation to the state, and I think that therefore what we have to do is we need to learn to be the very best West Virginia university we can be. If we do that, we'll be great. But if we try to be someone else, we'll never truly be the institution that we should be. And the people here really want that to happen. But we need to provide the kind of resources and actual direction. The second thing I will say, and this goes to the first question. Now you got me on a roll. The second thing is that the elephant in the room on the loss of public support is the fact that universities have become political in their views very often, and political calculations tend to diminish the role of institutions. I mean, we can talk about free speech, but the minute that someone is not invited onto a campus, and that is on any news, the minute someone is not allowed to speak, these are places of good ideas, bad ideas, dumb ideas, brilliant ideas, but this is a marketplace. And we have got to learn to celebrate the fact that we have differences and that we cannot limit that discussion. And I think that really goes to the heart of much of the diminution of support for higher education.
Yeah, Bob, I would just add, higher education is both a public good and a private good, and I think that's fine. And Gordon, I agree with you so much about this ranking business. It's balderdash. I'll use a polite word. I can think of other words.
In the foreword to his new book, you
Yeah.
used something more, a bit more abrupt and concise. I think it was.
I can't remember what it was, but it must have been brilliant.
It was BS.
Oh yeah, BS. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, both. That's what it is. Yeah, and it is, and it's ridiculous that some universities play into this business and try to jigger around stuff so that their rankings will go up. It doesn't matter what the rankings are. What matters is what the university does to educate men and women to become good citizens and good contributors to their society.
Well, I want to reference, Gordon, your new book.
Thank you.
Land Grant Universities. Land Grant Universities for the Future makes a nice stocking gift.
If you can't sleep.
And let me just say something parenthetically here. If anyone here is a PhD student writing a dissertation or an undergraduate writing a paper, if you want a model for how to organize a body of material and explicate it, look at any one of the chapters in that book. That said, in the book, you say that you think that most of the fiscal problems of land-grant universities could be solved if people had a sense that they were getting a return on their investment. Now, they're not perceiving a return on their investment, does that mean that they're right, that there isn't enough of a return on the investment, or that land-grant universities are doing a pretty poor job of conveying how much, in fact, they're contributing to a state?
Well, you know, Bob, I think that's a great question, but I think it is. I think it's more of the latter than the former. Think about this. So in this country, since 2008, since the bottom of the recession, we've created about 15 million jobs. That's a lot of jobs. There's another shocking figure that no one talks about, and that is the fact that of those 15 million jobs, only 800,000 of them required only a high school degree. So in other words, if you want to get a job in today's economy, you've got to have some form of higher education. But I think one of the things we don't do a good job of in terms of higher education is explaining that there are a number of roads to salvation. Obviously, we want everyone to come to West Virginia University. But at the same time, in this state alone, which is a small state, we have over 20,000 jobs for which we do not have people who are skilled. And so we've got to start thinking about higher education as a great partner for the rest of education. So we have to think about what we're doing as pre-K through life and bringing all of these elements together. So yes, higher education is important, but we have not explained to people that the doctors are not grown on trees, or engineers are not planted in the soil. This is an educational enterprise, but then the meaningful side of that needs to be demonstrated. The other thing, of course, is many of the people in this audience know, I believe that one of the things that we have done terribly in this state, as an example, is the fact that we've exported coal, oil, and gas, but we've exported talent. And that exportation of talent has caused a lot of people to think that higher education is not worthy of them because they don't stay here. So we have to deal with that.
Yeah. I'd like to make a couple comments. I was the president of a very large and distinguished land-grant university, that being West Virginia University. And we did a lot of extraordinary things. But let me tell you a little humor in all this. My governor was a guy named J. Rockefeller. Rockefeller was one of the more interesting guys I've ever met. And he called me during my presidency and he said, "I have an idea for you." Oh God, what is it? Because he was like one of the richest men in the United States. And he had an idea. His idea was, and some of you are old like I am in the audience, but you'll recall that Rockefeller called, he said, "I'll tell you what, couple ideas. One is," he said, "you know what we need? We need a modern football stadium." And he says, "Let me tell you how we're going to fund it in 2 months. 2 months. And by the way, not with one dime of state money. I will do my share." Well, yeah, he did his share. But so did a guy named Buck Harless, the state's largest coal operator. And it took a total, and my job was to be the hustler and go to everybody and shake them down. And again, I laugh because some of you are as old as I am, which is frightening. But interestingly, we not only got it built, but we also, in building Mountaineer Field, we built without one dime. Now listen to me carefully. Not a dime of state money. We raised everything privately. And by the way, you're still using Mountaineer Field. And by the way, it ought to be used even more than it is now, because that is a real enormous pride people take in this state. And I can remember the day we dedicated that, and many of you will too. Bob Byrd was here, Jennings Randolph was here, and somehow they all ended up in the front row, and not surprisingly so. But that's one way we have changed in society, and that is we've given too much to the politicians who are anxious to take bows and take credit, which is utter nonsense. They're not the people paying for anything. and it's sort of a joke.
Well,
I'll never forget it. We built that in 2 months, Mountaineer Stadium. Anybody that was anybody fought, killed, kicked, cried to come to that game. And we now have one of the most creative guys in the world, E. Gordon Gee, who is, I like to say this about Gordon. We've known each other since the beginning of time.
Just
and I'm even
Gene,
older than he is.
In keeping with your point about Gordon Gee, that he's one of the most creative individuals, I'd like to pursue just one other point with respect to your book. You talk about the need to create a people's university or a servant university, and really to get everybody on board. And I can't ever remember any time while I was at West Virginia University, which was 43 years, certainly not when I was hired. I never remember when I was hired the chairman saying, look, we are a land-grant university here, and you ought to know that we think that's very important. And the dean thinks it's important, and the provost thinks it's important, and the president thinks it's important. That point was never made. No dean ever talked about how important the land-grant obligation is. No provost that I can remember, or no president that I can remember. It seems to me if you're going to do some of what you're proposing, what was it Billy Joel said, we have to get in a New York state of mind. We have to get in a land-grant state of mind. I just don't think, as an institution,
I'm not sure whether it's branding that we're talking about. I mean, Gordon goes to every county every year or every 2 years, and West Virginia University is out there. We may not be connecting the benefits people are receiving, like 4-H or medicine, with the particular university.
Exactly. The connection, questioning whether that connection is being made.
Yeah, I think we've done a lot better job, and part of it is the fact that we have a unified approach to how we talk about the institution. Sharon Martin is right down here. She's a magician, and so my first 6 months or so, what I did is every piece of information that came in about the university, I put in sort of a big, you can remember this, I put it in a big box, and then put it out on a table one day. You couldn't tell it was from West Virginia University. It looked like it was from 14 or 15 or 16 different institutions. The colleges and the department sometimes didn't give the type of recognition. So I think universities are stories. Universities, we don't produce cars, we don't produce widgets. We create ideas, and we create people who create ideas, and we move on to another issue. So we have to tell our story in a positive way, and people need to know. For many years, no one knew that Extension, David, was part of it until you really got into that. Extension is our front door. It's the voice to the
And
institution.
4-H.
And 4-H. 4-H is so incredibly
but there are
important.
so many glorious stories that you people have been participants in, and you have been front and center. And you're people that folks, gee, I finally got to meet this guy or this woman. And it was really exciting stuff. I sort of got a kick out of my military service. We flew refueling bombers. That's what we did. And I can remember one funny story, how you grow up and get smarter, but I can remember this KC-135. I can remember being in that airplane and listening to a strange sound. It was ping, 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 ping. And I thought, this is when I first started in the Air Force, and what is this? Well, what it was is that the enemy was shooting at and hitting us, and many of you had that experience too, if you flew a bomber. And I can't say that was the most fun I ever had, but the most fun, quite frankly, was being president of the American League Baseball. And I did that for quite a while. And more importantly, those people would always call me for contributions because I made a lot of money then. And those poor guys made nothing. But I'd never said no to you. And
Now, I've got an idea for you now, Gene.
Why?
We need a new business school, and oh my gosh, we've got all sorts of opportunities
Why is it?
available.
Well,
I
there's
knew
one
what was
other aspect of your.
And I knew what was coming.
Yeah, there's one other aspect of what you propose in that book that I want to raise here, because in some ways it's quite controversial, and that is that as a land-grant university, we have to become much more sensitive to what the people in the state want, and the people in this state, and from all of the interviews that you did with people in higher education throughout the country, people in practically every state are not happy with the teaching function of the university. They don't think enough emphasis is being given to teaching, and perhaps too much emphasis being given to research. And one of the points you raise in your book, 2 points really, is you talk about the tyranny of departmental structures and the tyranny of the university gerontocracy. Yes, I'm part of that. Namely, that we allow departments to define what constitutes promotable research, and that tends not to place great stress on applied research that might be of great service to the states, but on basic research or what have you. And that secondly, the gerontocracy, the older faculty members of the university, are highly reluctant to start to entertain change and think about, well, how might we restructure the emphases on teaching, research, and service so that perhaps research is not weighed quite so heavily as the other two.
I think, let's just talk about the language of the academy. We talk about teaching loads and research opportunities.
Right.
What does that say to you? That says that teaching is a load, is a burden, and it says that research is what is central. Now, I happen to be very proud that we're a major research university, and I believe in it. I also think that we kill a lot of trees by too much being written that is nonsense. A number of other kinds of things like that. I think that we really do need to be focused on quality and not on quantity. The second thing is this, is the fact that we need to now get out of this paradigm that everyone can be a utility infielder. If I were king for a day, I would turn to Brian Ballantyne, the chair of our English department, and say, look, Brian, what you have is you have some really good people here, and I'm going to reward the department by giving you a block grant. But you have to meet certain criteria to improve that department. And so if Brian is really smart, he has some people there who are going to teach and teach brilliantly and pay them and recognize them and value them. Secondly, we're going to have some people who write the great American novel, let them do that. And some people maybe never should see a student, but let them have opportunities. But by that, we start thinking about ourselves again as they thought in the year 1200 as a university community rather than as a set of individuals who are just within the academy, not really creating a community, an intellectual community. We do not do that with the kind of reward structures we have right now.
Nor does service. I think service to the community is certainly rewarded when it appears on someone's annual review. But if somebody hasn't engaged in any service to the community, but has been particularly good in university service or in service to their discipline, the fact that they haven't engaged in any community service does not hurt them at all. And it seems to me the land-grant university that you are conceiving of is one that is going to have to convey very clearly that the reward structure is going to include service to the community.
Absolutely, but again, what I'll say, there are multiple roads to salvation. There are some people who just simply we don't want to have out in the community. Just kidding. There's some.
Remember one thing.
There are some people. There are some people who. There are some people who want to have other opportunities, and so what we're going to do, is we need to have. We have a number of ways to recognize and structure people. Jim, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I appreciate the question. It takes a balance. It takes a mix. And it's always a struggle. As a faculty member, you're pushed to be great in the classroom, to get research done, to serve in the community. And it takes a balance, right? So you laid out the exact order. Education first. The students come first. The success measures matter. Retention rates, graduation rates. Students are always first. Second is the research piece. And as I said when I was here, and I say where I am now, you need the mix. You need the applied, you need the theoretical, you need all types of research. And as a land grant, you should value all those types. And the third piece we can never forget why we're created was to serve. And again, that's the extension into 4-H. But you're always pulled, pulled in multiple directions. And it's hard to find that right balance to be the university that the state needs it to be. Again, I think WVU does it very well.
But remember one thing. There's one thing that we all forget, and we're in show business. Come on. You guys know it, and I know it. We've all known it a long time. To prove the point is that no matter what survey you read, it tells you the same thing. The same thing is simply that until you can find something that is a real substitute, and it's very expensive and the price is going up, it's going to stay that way, folks, because everybody wants the best for what their kids are, what they do. Come on, we're all the same. And we've all done it. We've sacrificed. We've sent them off to the best schools. And we're going to keep doing it, okay? And we will continue to be driven by money. And I'm sorry, that is the way it is, again, by all of the people in that audience that are as old as I am would tell you the same thing. They've written a lifetime of checks, and, oh, I can't do it anymore. Yeah, you can, and you will. And by the way, you will decide they're going to be land grant or they're going to be AAU. Come on, we know it all. And it's not going to change.
Well, Gene, you raised the issue about money, which leads
To athletics?
no, not yet. Which leads into this next issue, which is a concern, I think, on the minds of many, namely that as universities have attempted to cope with declines in state appropriations by creating a variety of different efficiencies, that what is gradually happening is that the university is paying more and more attention and being more and more influenced by market considerations. What will play? Let me just read you. The University of Illinois is getting rid of its anthropology and linguistic majors. University of Wisconsin at Superior is getting rid of 9 majors, including political science. The University of Wisconsin at Stevens Point getting rid of 13 majors, to make room for programs with clear pathways. University of Akron getting rid of 80 programs to increase programs that are of greater interest and provide greater opportunities to students. I think some are wondering if over time arts and sciences is going to be seriously slighted, and that greater and greater attention will be paid to majors that have a direct connection to some job prospect. And the other concern,
But you're
with
right
the other
on
concern
the
with
dime.
respect,
You're right on the dime sequentially. You win a prize. My dad used to sell Buicks, and there's a nice one waiting for you outside.
right.
But you're right. And but all of us, I like everybody. I think everybody here is gifted. But you know what? We do not win many reality prizes. I'm sorry, we don't.
Yeah, David.
I wanted to say that there's a reason states are cutting back. They're being pushed for expenditures in other areas, and there's a limit on the tax tolerance of the American public. So the cost of medicine is up, cost of prisons is up. In West Virginia, the opioid addiction is a multi-billion-dollar problem. And so they're looking around and they're saying, well, they can raise money on their own. They just had a successful campaign. They can do it again. Or they can raise tuition. They did it last year, and it hasn't hurt enrollment yet very much. And so we have to look, we have to somehow match our expenses with our income. And that raises the whole issue of business principles applied in colleges, and it also brings up the president, because the president has a role in monitoring all of this and making this balance work. I'm just in with a story. I went to Harvard School for New Presidents my second year. I've been a president a year. There were 30 of us there, and we were talking one day, and someone said, "Who owns the university? Who owns the university?" And the dean of that school that year said, That's a question that you should never ask, let alone answer. There are too many owners, and they all think they're exclusive. So we have the people of the legislature of every state. We have the federal government. We have the faculty. We have the staff. We have the students. We have the parents.
The boards.
The boards. Many multiple. Governance was changed 4 or 5 times while I was president. 4 or 5 times changing governance. So I think we're just not quite through how we're going to apply efficiency principles to this very important mission. I wrote down a 3-page list of why I think it's important, so I'm not going to go over it. But I think we have to solve some of these practical problems of allocating resources.
Bob, I want to make a couple of comments. You were talking about universities doing away with certain liberal arts programs for theoretically more practical problems. I'm going to argue, and I think I'm correct, the arts and sciences are the most practical educational discipline of all, because it teaches you how to think, how to change, to adapt, and guess what? Things are changing all the time. It is the most practical discipline that exists. And then we have this other nonsense, I just don't buy it. Basic research and pure research. There's just research, and you don't know if it's inquisitive-driven research. It often will stumble into something that is extraordinarily practical, and so-called applied research can, guess what? Come up with theoretical things that have a life and an interest of their own. But back to my point, the arts and sciences are the most practical, and we should never stop arguing that and making that point.
Yeah, I'm going to say I agree with Peter. I think that, I mean, from my nearly 40 years university president, the same story has always been, well, the humanities are going to disappear, a variety of other things. Hey, it hasn't happened. I mean, there are a number of strains, but there's a number of strains in engineering and a variety of other things. I think the real challenge we face right now is the fact that we don't know what the future holds. Think about this. In the next 10 to 15 years, 80% of the jobs we are training people for, if we use that word, are going to disappear. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, if that's the case, we've got to learn to peer around the corner, and the only thing that's going to save us if we can read and write and understand literature and do a variety of other things, because we have to, the agility of our mind is going to be what preserves our democracy, in my view. So I think that being able to now peer around the corner, yes, we have to train engineers, we have to train librarians, we have to train folks to go out and be as skilled and a variety of other things. And that was my point, by the way, Bob, about the fact that not everything needs to be performed in universities. We need to work with the community and technical colleges and others to create pathways. Our role as a major American research university, land-grant institution, is we're to create the ideas, and the people who create the ideas, we're going to create the jobs that are being trained in other places too.
What about the notion again, in the interest of generating more revenue, of partnering with industry? Is that, are there potential problems there?
Yeah, you know, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm dominating here, but I will. But anyway, it's my stage.
Well, you can
just kidding you. But you had your turn. So so yeah, I think that is a clear issue. So the way I like to ask the question is this: what is the core mission of the university? So let's think about that. What is the core mission of the university? If it's teaching and learning, it's faculty, staff, and students. In our instance, it's 1.8 million West Virginians. So we have to ask the question: why are we in the restaurant business? Why are we in the parking business? Why are we in a number of ancillary businesses that are not necessarily at our core? And if there's someone else who can do it better than we can, and we don't divert our resources away from teaching and learning, then that's what we ought to do. It is not necessarily popular. It's not necessarily the right thing that people think we ought to do. I'll give one quick story. Ohio State, 36,000 parking spaces. I asked that same question. I said, Why don't we privatize parking? Not sell it, privatize it. I mean, the faculty senate voted against me. Everyone said I was corporatizing it until I got $500 million and gave everyone a damn pay raise. Then all of a sudden, I was the most popular guy in town. But no, the point is the fact that we really have to keep, in this very fragile time, we have to keep ourselves focused on the core of the university, not on the noise. And I think that's important.
Bob, I think part of what your question, you're getting to dwindling resources. So what do? We turn to other places, right? Gordon and I spent a ton of time trying to raise money for the institution, and we have to do that. And we're thankful for the people who support the institutions. You talk about industry partnerships. They're critical for a university's success. Great opportunities for students, internships, research opportunities. The partnership to develop the industries in the region become a critical part of what we should be doing. And I'm proud that this university and Clemson do it very well.
How do you know when it goes too far?
Well, hey, look, as faculty members, I go back to when I was a full-time faculty member, you know what the limitations are, and you know what the ethical boundaries are.
Yeah.
And you have to trust your faculty that they're gonna do the research in the right way. They're bringing in funds to the institution, supporting students, undergrad and grad. There's a great way to do it, but like many things in life, there's a wrong way to do it.
Jim is absolutely right. I'm a great believer in industry university partnerships. They can be done the right way, and contrary to what some people may think about business and industry, they're not all bad people. There are many smart people that know that the value of the university to the industry is because the university has a diversity of people within it, including some idiots and cranks and people that speak nonsense that sometimes speak truth. And most businesses understand that, and you can have partnerships that are a win-win on the both sides, and I think you need it given the fact that, as we all know, public financing for public universities is down, and unless my crystal ball is wrong, it ain't going up again in our lifetime.
Right. Well, let me just read you what two scholars have written apropos of this issue. This was in the Chronicle of Higher Education. This is why I raise it. The line between education and business is all but dissolved. Corporations lease campus buildings and help direct research in campus labs. For profit motive is not a good model either for research or education. It commodifies thought and emphasizes what can be done quickly and what is hot and trendy over thorough and painstaking research that contributes to knowledge.
I think the state governments of the United States are moving toward tacking demands on the money they send to colleges. Here's a paycheck, spend it any way you want. It is hard to manage in today's environment. I mean, if you look at when programs are brought together that make sense, that do something for people in West Virginia, the legislature tends to support it. But I think we're going to have to do a better job selling our legislators on what we can do for them. They know a lot of it, but they don't know all of it. And but I think the idea of unlimited funds for without obligations is gone.
I think that there's a great opportunity not only to partner with businesses, but that maybe, I'm thinking about all of the research that's been done with that $90 billion Chinese initiative that is coming to West Virginia. That's I think, very important for faculty members to do that. But there's also, I think, a need to be talking about the ways in which you have for-profit institutions, like what's happening at Ohio State with the Apple Collaborative. That's core to what the universities should be doing. And so to judge the collaborations that you make with private industry in such a way that it really improves what the core is that you're trying to do is really important.
Gordon Gee is in many ways as remarkable as you'll ever meet with anybody in higher education on how to skin a cat. and I mean, it's disgusting what he pulls off. whatever he receives, you know what? The story now that he is not there, you can go to Ohio State and they'll say, damn, if we would have listened to that guy, we could have raised probably about millions more. And I just think of all these schemes that you had about fleecing the public. But boy, you were good. And you know, and
Well, you talked
invited
about,
him?
You talked about his skinning cats, and I'd like to know how he's going to skin this cat. WVU functions in the context of the political, social, economic, cultural environment of this state, and is influenced by it, and of course, as a land-grant institution, is obligated to engage with it. But in your addresses, Gordon, over the last several years, you have made the point that if West Virginia is going to, the state of West Virginia is going to succeed in developing its potential, which you point out very clearly and very well. The state has to change its negative self-image. It has to change, and here I think you're even talking about the university, change its fear of failure and change its complacency. Now, you talk about change a negative self-image. You're talking there about a very basic attitude. How do you skin that cat? How do you go about getting a state to change its negative self-image?
But all you do, all you
does
do. Hey, I've been a consultant at Ohio State, and I almost felt guilty in the size of my check and what I went home with. But then I thought, the heck with it. Gordon, you continue to make money off of me. And he does.
Well, let's hear his response to that.
Yeah, so I think that, Gene, I paid you way too much. But I think that, no, just kidding you. But I think that, I think that the issue that you're raising is how do we lead, not follow? You know, see, this is the thing. This is the beauty about West Virginia, is the fact that this university is the social, economic, cultural center of this state. Right. We are the largest employer. We hire more people. We create more jobs. And so what we have to do is we have to learn to, first of all, take great pride in that. Secondly of all, to lead, not follow. One of the things we're doing right now with this Blue Ribbon Commission is we're really saying, hey, look, you know, the emperor has no clothes. We really have got to start thinking differently about how we reform higher education and how we come up with a new structure and function. And if we just waited for the legislature or for someone else to do that, it would not necessarily happen. They can be our partners, but one of the ways you change the image of a university is to lead, not follow, and not to just sit there and let people come at you. The second thing is this: in terms of West Virginia, we have defined ourselves in some ways, but we've let other people define us. Now, this is not meant to be a political statement, but what has happened is the fact that there are a lot of people in this country that are tired of having other two people define who they are. And that's one of the reasons that we ended up with the election in 2016. And so we have got to get over negative elitism and realize we have remarkable things. We're in God's time zone. I mean, how would you like to live way out there in the middle of nowhere in Seattle? And then, and you know, and who at hellsake wants to live in New Jersey? Sorry for any of our students here, I love them. But you know, I mean, what you want to do is you want to start defining who we are in a very positive way, and that's what the role of the university is. We really do need to make certain that. That's what we do. And the power of this institution, let me just say that again, the power of this institution, as opposed to any that I've served, is the fact that we single-handedly can redefine the nature of who we are as a people. And I think that that's wonderful.
Yeah, and Gordon says it well, and I tried to say this when I was here. WVU is special. This university drives the state. This university is the shining star in the state. This is a university that changes lives, produces incredible research. Any investment in it is a good investment. And I think we just have to keep saying that story because it's true.
Well, let me switch to students for a minute. And there's a book that came out around a year ago, and it's attracted a great deal of attention, talking about the fragility of the students that are starting to come through the pipeline. And these are students who are seeking safe spaces and want to be relieved of anxieties and be freed from what are called microaggressions. And the University of California defines microaggressions as if you work hard, you can succeed in life. I believe the most qualified person should get the job. Everyone can succeed in this society if they work hard enough. America is a land of opportunity. All of those have been defined as microaggressions and as discussions to be avoided. Also, the young people about to come into the university now have a much less of a commitment to the impulse of democracy. Young people asked to rate how important democracy is on a scale of 1 to 10. Only 39% of them were willing to give it a 10. Does the university have a role to play here in terms of dealing with the fragile student and with the student who may not be as committed to the democratic impulse as
Jim and I are both sitting university presidents. I will say something, our students aren't fragile. Our students are not fragile. Our students are really terrific. And that is not meant as an applause line. Let me give you one example. So, Milo Yiannopoulos, the provocateur, he was making the college tour. He came on our campus. He spoke. Students came. They listened. There was not a screaming, yelling, whatever. He said some outrageous things. We spoke out about that. He then goes to Berkeley and they burn down the damn campus. Our students, I believe, and this is a real belief I have about the kids who come here, our students understand that in order to be able to play, they've got to play fairly with each other. We don't have a lot of this other kind of stuff going on. I think it's outrageous when we prevent people from coming onto campus, when we don't allow ideas to be spoken about, when we limit free speech in a variety of ways. And so that, I think, is a hallmark of this place. If I were a mother and father, I'd send my kid to West Virginia University as opposed to some of the other institutions I've served, because the fact they're going to get an education, because they're going to be exposed to a lot of ideas. They're not going to be limited in that. The minute we move from ideas to political catechisms, we've lost our ability to call ourselves a university, period.
Good point. And Bob, let me just jump in just for 1 second. I'm thankful for that gentleman right there, David Hardesty, for a lot of reasons. Not only was he and his wonderful wife, Susan, so good to me and Beth and our family when we were here, he created the Festival of Ideas exactly for the reason you're talking about.
It's called a festival, isn't it?
Festival of Ideas, and it was when he was a student. And then he brought it back and elevated him, when he was president, he brought this back and made it even more important. Everything that you're talking about is exactly why I think he created this series.
Yeah, I think that's true. I also, you know, in my class I teach lawyers as leaders in society. I have them keep a journal, and they show me what they do for a 2-week period in 6-minute increments. A lot of our students work, and they're out there working hard. A lot of them participate in organizations. Now, these are law students, but I'm sure that to some degree it goes across. They may come from homes with problems, but they're growing up in a mature way in college. And, you know, I think the country asked for this when it eliminated public service as a requirement, not just the draft, but other kinds of things. And so the students have a lot of growing up to do when they come here. But I agree with Gordon. I don't see fragility, and I see a lot of common sense in a lot of them. They get it from their parents, and they get it from the classroom teachers and so forth.
And the importance of bringing in speakers from all kind of backgrounds to share
right.
ideas, whether you like them or not.
It's new for them.
Kind and open and honest way is the right way to do it.
That one thing I would just add that fits perfectly here is that you need to have more people with gray hair and maybe not so much hair.
You're looking right at me, Gene. I see that.
But
really
you've
funny.
ridden the horse, you know what you're doing, but we can't let you go so young because you're in many ways at a prime, and you are worth your weight in gold.
Diane, you wanted to say
Yes.
something?
I wanted to say that I agree with the whole need to make sure that all voices are heard on campus, and that's terribly important. But I also think that we have to recognize that there are individuals that are on our campus that are experiencing enormous stress. I mean, any president who has dealt with the suicide of a student knows the trauma that is associated not only with the individual and those around you. So I do think that when I heard the word fragile, I heard those things. What are we doing to make sure that those students that are on the brink, those students that of course are on the brink in terms of drugs, we can't deny that that doesn't exist in the academy. It does. There was just an article not too long ago that really talked about the enormous stress on graduate students, and I think that that's something that we just need to make sure that we're aware of those issues and that we have a support service for them to access.
To me, I think there are two different conversations here. I mean, I think most of us would agree with you. If someone is suffering from depression that's going to lead to suicide, they need treatment from the university now. But I think also they need to hear some hard ideas and have discussions about them. You know, there are obviously issues moving through society, and they always reflect themselves on the college campus.
I do think that our students are, I said one thing, I don't think they're fragile. I do think that they're under enormous pressure. You know, I'm much more so than I mean, we kind of grew up in a naive time. And you know, it was pretty, you know, I mean, you watched Happy Days, and that's kind of what the life was about. But I think with social media, I think with pressures that exist through the kind of conversations that take place, the kind of exposures that kids have, the opioid issues, a variety of other things, we need to be very cognizant that universities are really reflections of the society at large. So focusing on that is important. We are spending a tremendous amount of time in thinking about how do we make our students really understand that the university is here for them rather than them being floating islands. And that, I think, is important. The other thing is, and we have out here Misha Poor, you know, when I talk about the fact that we need to be open to ideas, we also need to be open to the fact that there are different cultures and different peoples, and we are black and white and brown, and we've got kids from Saudi Arabia and all over the world, and we need to be cognizant of their cultures and their opportunities that prevail from them. And so when you talk about ideas, it needs to be openness to all ideas and understanding how they contribute to the whole. I think that is so important.
I have a question that I'm not sure it's pertinent, but I'm going to go ahead with it. It's got to do with having really controversial, bad, idiotic speakers on campus. I am totally for that, as I know we all are. Question I have is, should it not be a requirement, though, when one of these really characters comes on campus, that they have to be exposed to questions that they have to answer? Or can
Yeah.
they just come in and hit and run and say outrageous stuff and never be questioned?
No,
or challenged?
that's the whole point. I mean, they should be challenged to questions. They should not be shut off from being questioned.
Right.
That's the point.
Good question, good point.
Okay, let me turn to the elephant in the room. What do you think, as we look into the future, what is college athletics going to be like in 10 years? Is it going to be the same as it is today, which frankly in some ways I find very depressing, or is it not?
I'm going to start with
And
that.
I know you want to hit that.
Yeah, well, the comment I want to make is, and it's obviously easier to say some things when you're a former than when you're not still in the position, Gordon, that you and Jim are in, but in my view, if I were in charge, and unfortunately I'm not, from my point of view, I've had it with big time intercollegiate athletics. The tail is wagging the dog. We're in the business of training people to go ahead and play in the NBA and the NFL and major leagues and baseball, on and on. I think we should do away with it. We should concentrate on education. We should have club sports and athletic activity. But
If I can interrupt just
Yeah,
for 1 minute.
yeah.
Only 2% of people playing in the top of Division I basketball and football ever go on to make a career out of the sports
no,
they're
Bob,
playing.
that's
Just
exactly
2%.
right. But the myth is that, you know, if you're in it, you got a pathway to success in the NBA or NFL, et cetera. I think that's nonsense.
That's the reason you're no longer a university president.
Yeah, but you know, the world, Dr. Gee, the world might be better if I were again.
Now, Jim, you're playing for the national championship here, so let's tell us about how we're going to do away with college football right now, okay?
Hey, look, and I appreciate all these comments. And Dr. Budig, I also appreciate your comment about Mountaineer Field and all the work that went in to make that happen. Beautiful Milan Pushkar Stadium that I enjoyed so many fun times in with my family. It's an important part of who a university is. It brings people together. It brings your alumni back. It allows me, when I was here and at Clemson, to raise money for engineering, to raise money for health sciences, to raise money for business and education when people come onto the campus to watch a game. So for us, it is an important part. It's an important part of the Mountaineer family. It brings us together. I still follow the Mountaineers, as does my wife. Every game we can get to watch, we watch. It connects us. The point is, it has to know its place within the university. We are first and foremost an educational enterprise, and we should never forget that. That always comes first. But for us, at Clemson, and I think here in West Virginia, at WVU, I love the Mountaineers and I love my Clemson Tigers. They're an important part of who we are. Though it's changing, Bob, it's changing. There's lawsuits, there's concussion research, there's gambling issues, there's in-game gambling issues, there's facilities expenses, there's a lot. There's a lot of discussion going on right now within athletics. We need to do our best to make sure it stays in its proper place within higher ed.
And
Neil,
it needs to be able to tell a story. Again, my issue, if you're just playing games, then we got to get out of that business. If we're only entertaining, 60, 70, 80,000 people for a Saturday afternoon, then let's get out of that business. On the other hand, we need to realize this. I have yet to get 80,000 people to show up for a chemistry lecture.
we don't quite have 80,000 here. Right?
Yeah, but you know, the point is the fact that every part of the university needs to contribute to the whole, and that's what Jim's point is, I think.
Neil, I have a question, Jim, for you. How do you put it in its proper place?
Yeah, that becomes the ultimate question, right? And it's just not for me. That is a bigger national issue worthy of discussion, right? As a leader, we do the best we can to make sure our student athletes graduate. They did very well when I was at West Virginia. I know they still do now. At Clemson, our student athletes graduate. They go on to be good citizens. They get great jobs. We try to run our programs at Clemson as we did and do at West Virginia, with the highest of character, the highest of class.
Yeah.
So, but Peter, it's not easy. You know that because you run them. You've had them.
Well, after Neil speaks, I have a suggestion for putting it in its proper place.
I was just going to note that I thought that this might be a topic that we'd chat about. And as I've thought about it in the recent weeks, I compared what it is today since when I became president of this university. I won't make a big litany of it, but every assistant coach was required to teach. That was part of their contract. What a world has changed. I mean, we know the salaries have changed. They're in another arena. We know the facilities have changed. But as I think about it, it isn't college sports. It's a big business. It's got other big partners and players. And it's probably not fair to expect that a university president or a group of university presidents are going to manage that big issue, that big experience. Because it's left campus. We don't own it anymore. We're just one of the players in that environment. So important changes to it will require not just our thinking, it'll be our ability to engage and work with some other major players.
And Neil, you're right. And part of that is hiring the right people, having the right kind of athletic director, the right kind of coaches, the right kind of culture, the right kind of value to make sure that things are done the right way. The focus is on the student athlete and their success rates, just not on the field, but in the classroom and in the community. And it's a big endeavor. There's no doubt.
And I couldn't agree with you more. I really do think for a president, it's getting the right AD and the right team there. You can influence their thinking and they can influence yours, but they're very important partners for you anymore.
Yes.
Well, if it's appropriate to say that a freshman shouldn't be able to join a fraternity or sorority in their freshman year because it's a distraction from building a solid foundation in terms of moving on beyond their freshman year. If that's a valid argument, and I think it is, why should we not have freshmen ineligibility in college sports?
We used to. I mean, we used to. When I started as university president, we had freshmen in eligibility. And I think that is a great idea. I mean, I believe very strongly in the acclimation of the student to the institution before they do anything else. And I think that is a great idea. And I think that's one of the things that we ought to reconsider. Sometime or other in this last 40 years, we started saying anyone can do anything in terms of intercollegiate athletics. I think we're changing that attitude, but that would be a great suggestion.
Okay, one other question I would like to put to you. All of you, as students, as faculty members, as administrators, have had experience at several universities. What is common to all of you is that you are all president of West Virginia University. What is it about West Virginia University that stood out from those other institutions you were at? Starting with Gene.
Well, that's not easy. That's really not easy because the truth be known, Notre Dame now plays a bunch of his games at Yankee Stadium now. And they do so to make sure that they're filling up Yankee Stadium, but they're also getting the best students they can get. And it's intercollegiate athletics is very, very complex.
Right, I agree with you on that, but what is it that has stood out about West Virginia University as an experience that's different from your experiences at the other?
A lot. For example, we had people like Sam Huff. We had some really unbelievable athletes who, by the way, gave money to this university.
Okay.
And they had successful careers, but along with it was a lot of money.
Yeah, well, that was good. Okay, Diane?
Well, I think that my time at West Virginia University has to be seen in the fact that I came in 1982. Not only are presidents responsible for hiring good provosts, but they're responsible for hiring good deans. And Gordon hired me as a dean. And at that time, there was a cadre of deans that were very involved in trying to work through with Gordon the directions of the university. We were in every county in the state. And the fact that this state is a very welcoming state,
Right.
and there were so many needs that needed to be considered. I think that it's the commitment to the state that makes this university really stand out.
Good point. Neil?
Well, like Gene said, there are a number of things, but one that I think I found distinguishing is, and I came to realize this more after I left the presidency and spent 20 years on the faculty, is that our students are different than they are at a lot of other universities. And it reflects their West Virginia experience. But I'll just end that by saying I was in the College of Business and Economics, developed good working relationships with a lot of companies that hired our students, and the feedback we got was they may not have all the technological bells and whistles that we sometimes see in students, but they've got a strong work ethic. They're prepared to be part of our work, to understand it. But one of the things they liked was the fact that they had a willingness to invest themselves in what they had selected to do.
Yeah, thank you, David.
I married a faculty brat, and we went to school together here. And so I've been associated with the university for 55 years, and Susan and I have been married for 50 years. There you go. Try to get that in all my talks now. I think there's an element that my faculty that I had and the faculty that I encouraged and today, they do care about the students. They take time to talk to them. They try to see them as individuals. And I think West Virginians care about us up here. I think a lot of the dialogue that's negative is a narrative. It's not real. If a parent works real hard to send their child here, it's worth our taking time to talk to them, and when you do, there's a rich feeling there. So I think it's in the nature of this being a state in which people care about one another. We'll get out of the car and help someone with the tire. We'll ask a question if they have it, and the faculty here will listen to that question and try to do something with it.
Yeah, for me, it's the character of the students and the people in a state that frankly is denigrated and marginalized by what I call the East Coast snobs, even though technically West Virginia is in the East Coast. but in a sense it's not, and there's this snobbery that denigrates West Virginia and feeds into a destructive self-image that needs to be corrected. But for me, again, it's the character of these students and all the people in the state who really give a damn about trying to be good men and women to do good things in the world.
I think for me it's very easy. Beth and I absolutely loved our 5 years here. We loved everything about West Virginia, everything about WVU. We have 6 family members who graduated from this great university, but Bob, it's very simple. It all comes down to the people. What makes this university so special are the people. The faculty, the staff, the students, the alumni. This is a special place for that reason.
Thank you. Gordon?
Well, first of all, they offered me a job to come back, and I like that. But
You were happy when I left.
I know, and but I tell you, you know, I've thought a lot about this because of the fact that I think that of the 4,500 universities in this country, most of them are striving to do good things, but most of them are striving to get somewhere else. I think it's all about prestige for a lot of institutions. The thing that I love about this place is I love the fact that we have purpose. I know that for myself, every day when I wake up, I know that I have a reason for doing what I'm doing, and I know I'm going to make a difference in the lives of someone. And every one of the people out here, all 27,000 are our faculty and staff and our 33,000 students, I think believe that. So if if you want to climb the prestige ladder, this is not the place. If you want to have real purpose in your life and accomplish great things, then this is where you should be. That's my view.
Thank you. At the start of this panel discussion, I had said how privileged each of these individuals was to be able to lead a university. In concluding, I think it's also worth noting how privileged all of us are to be part or to have been part of an academic community. And the reasons for that, I think, are beautifully explained by John Masefield in his wonderful poem entitled A University, Splendid, Beautiful, and Enduring. And I'd like to read that to you, and I think it's a wonderful way to conclude. A university, splendid, beautiful, and enduring. He was the poet laureate in England back in the 1940s. There are few earthly things more splendid than a university. In these days of broken frontiers and collapsing values, when the dams are down and the floods are making misery, when every ancient foothold has become something of a quagmire, wherever a university stands, it stands and shines. Wherever it exists, the free minds of men, urged on to full and fair inquiry, may still bring wisdom into human affairs. There are few earthly things more beautiful than a university. It is a place where those who hate ignorance may strive to know, where those who perceive truth may strive to make others see, where seekers and learners alike, banded together in the search for knowledge, will honor thought in all its finer ways, will welcome thinkers in distress or in exile, will uphold ever the dignity of thought and learning, and will exact standards in these things. They give to the young in their impressionable years the bond of a lofty purpose shared, of a great corporate life whose links will not be loosed until they die. They give young people that close companionship for which youth longs, and that chance of endless discussion of the themes which are endless and without which youth would seem to be a waste of time. There are few things more enduring than a university. Religions may split, or a sect or heresy. Dynasties may perish or be supplanted, but for century after century, the university will continue, and the stream of life will pass through it, and the thinker and the seeker will be bound together in the undying cause of bringing thought into the world. Thank you.
That's perfect.
Great way to
There's a reception to follow behind those doors there.
Thank you all very. Am I on? Thank you all so very much for coming, and thank you, Dr. DeClerico, for serving as our moderator, and all of the presidents for being here. It's been remarkable. Please give them another round of applause. And as Dr. DeClerico said, there's a reception behind that wall. And for anyone who would like the opportunity to take selfies with the presidents, we have a screen set up over here to my left.